For NYUpSyracuse.com, this is Matt Parrino, joined as always by Ryan Talbot. And we are in the clear of the 2019 NFL Draft. So much in the lead up, breaking down all these potential prospects. And, the Bills landed a ton of talented players in the draft, but they also added 8 new undrafted free agents that will be taking part in minicamp this weekend. And Ryan, what I thought we could do here, what we thought we could do here is, break down some of the top undrafted free agents, pick our top 2 guys that have maybe the best chance to make this team or maybe make an impact over the course of minicamp and then through training camp. And why don't you kick us off? Who's your number 1 guy that you think can make an impact?
Well, I'll stay local, and I'll go with UB quarterback Tyree Jackson. I just think that he's going to have a lot of opportunities between rookie minicamp, between training camp, and between the preseason, because you need to have that guy, that fourth quarterback, especially over the summer, that gets a lot of the work in when you let the vets rest. You don't want to play them too often. So this is going to be a true showcase for Jackson to show what he can do, to show that he fits what Buffalo has already in Josh Allen in terms of having that backup that has a similar skill set, whether it's number 2 or more realistically number 3 quarterback possibly this year, that has that same type of skill set where if something were to happen to Josh Allen, you wouldn't have to modify or change the playbook that much because they have those similar traits where, big, athletic, big arm, can run with the ball. There's some similarities there where, the Buffalo's offense would not have to necessarily change much if they had to get him into the game or into any kind of live game action.
Yeah, and you look at Tyree Jackson, and Brandon Beane spoke about it now numerous times about the fact that he was on their draft board because they were able to see him so up close and personal at the 2 local pro days here, the familiarity with the program at the University of Buffalo, and yeah, it just makes too much sense. All of these similarities between Allen and Tyree, they work out together. They're very familiar with each other, and I think that you go and watch some of Tyree's tape. And the big arm is obviously there, a la Josh Allen. His ability to scramble. I mean, there's times when you watch him on tape and you almost wonder if he's a wildcat type running back because of the way that he shifts it into that next gear. It's really unbelievable. And what's so impressive about Tyree Jackson too, the prospect. Obviously, he slid in the draft. He didn't get drafted, and there's a lot of concerns with where he's at fundamentally and technically. But you watch his tape and watch the way that he so fluidly delivers the ball on the run with power, with distance, and with accuracy. And you have to really look at that. And just if you're Brandon Beane, getting this guy as an undrafted free agent has to be just a wow moment to have the potential to have him be Josh Allen's backup.
Yeah, without a doubt. The other thing I would say is if I'm a GM, if I'm Brandon Beane, I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, long term, who's going to have more value? Tyree Jackson or a guy like Derek Anderson is my number 3. Realistically, and I know it's happened to the Bills before where they've had 2 quarterbacks go down and they've needed that number 3 quarterback. Realistically, though, most teams don't get to that number 3 quarterback on the field in terms of in a regular season. But if you can develop Tyree Jackson, if you can get him out on the field and have him show what he can do and really show that he could be an NFL quarterback, you're going to start getting calls from other teams, whether that's this year, next year, 2 years from now, and they're going to start offering draft picks. And we know how valuable Brandon Beane finds draft picks and what he thinks of those. So if you even look long-term down the road in terms of value, Tyree Jackson is a much more valuable commodity, in my opinion, than a guy like Derek Anderson. And I get Anderson has been a great mentor for Josh Allen. Maybe you can carve out some kind of special coaching role for him if he doesn't make the team. I don't know if that's something he would want to do. But you don't just want to necessarily keep a veteran as your number 3 quarterback just because they had a positive influence in a quarterback's rookie year. It is valuable, but you have to think long-term as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go for my number 1 potential impact player of the undrafted free agents. I'm going to go with David Sills, the 5th from West Virginia, wide receiver, a guy that, you dial it back about the Senior Bowl, and this guy was going in the third round in a lot of mock drafts. A few of the experts had him going to the Bills, so it seems like a perfect fit. Obviously, interest on both sides. They bring him in here as a guy that potentially could be, some depth behind Cole Beasley in that slot. He's very sudden in his route running from that slot position. You watch his film and see the kind of capabilities he has, on the inside, on the outside. He really impressed me in the way that he battles in those contested catches situations. And I think that's something that, if you're a Bills fan and you went through last season, especially the early parts, that was something that was lacking in this wide receiver group, going and fighting for the ball. And they brought in a couple guys now that you feel like are going to be able to do that. One thing about Sills that I really like too is there's a familiarity with Tyree Jackson. I think that they're going to get a chance to work together throughout this summer, all the way through training camp on the third team. They both were at the Senior Bowl together, so they got accustomed to each other there. They're working out together this week at the University of Buffalo, and I think it'll be interesting to see, what they can do together because they are two of the more hyped undrafted free agents.
Yeah, and Buffalo clearly wanted Sills based on the contract that they offered him as an undrafted free agent. You look at the draft, Buffalo did not take a wide receiver in the draft. Like you said, they did sign some guys in free agency, but he has an opportunity to make this team. I mean, there are few sure things when you get beyond the Robert Foster, Zay Jones, John Brown, Cole Beasley of the team. Besides those four, I wouldn't say that any other player on this roster is a sure thing to be on Buffalo's opening day roster come September. So Sills has that opportunity to really, prove his worth here in rookie camp, training camp, preseason, and prove that he belongs on the final 53-man roster.
Number 2 for you, I know, is Tyrell Dotson, linebacker. Has a very cool story. If you Google him and bring up his profile on NFL.com, and I think the Bills even tweeted this, has a really amazing relationship with a special needs young gentleman that was very inspirational. Seems like a perfect fit in Buffalo. What do you like about him? How do you think he can make an impact?
Well, watching him play a little bit at Texas A&M, I think that he stood out a little bit on film in terms of what he can do. I think that he is a very good tackler. That's something, obviously, that Sean McDermott covets with these players on his defense. I think that he's a guy that can come in and contribute as a special teams player as a rookie. He is a guy that plays at a position that, again, Buffalo did add a linebacker in this draft class, but they're looking for depth behind their starting trio. And you look at what he did in his career at Texas A&M, you feel like he, at least as a rookie, could come in and serve as a depth role or in a depth role, and then also contribute on special teams. But, throughout his career, you got to see him a little bit in terms of his toughness on the field, his ability to tackle, as I already mentioned. May not be the greatest athlete, and that may have been a reason why he fell, but I think he's a good enough athlete to fit into this defense.
And he's got some speed. I mean, he ran a 4.6 40, a guy that can zoom across, the field, and that's something that this coaching staff and this regime is high on at all positions. They want speed out there on the field, and this is a guy that kind of fits that bill. For me, at number 2, I'm going to go with University of Buffalo product, cornerback Cam Lewis. I think this is a guy that's been overlooked a little bit. The Bills get him as an undrafted free agent, and you throw on his film, and it's crazy. I got an instant feeling of Taron Johnson, the physicality, the hard-hitting nature, and the way that he plays the position, the well-roundedness to his game. I mean, a guy that will, hit you like a linebacker, but can cover like, a shutdown corner. And he's somebody that went out over the course of the last few months and all of his workouts and all of his appearances and wanted to make a point to scouts and to general managers that he can play both on the inside and the outside. I think he projects better as a slot corner because of his physicality, and that fits right in with what the Bills are trying to do. Listen, Taron Johnson was great last year, and I think the Bills have big plans for him. He could be one of the elite slot corners in the league, but the way that he plays the game, that physical nature, it leads to injuries, and he was injured almost throughout the whole season with that shoulder last year. So you want some depth, and I think you look at this roster right now, and Raphael Bush was a nice backup option as a safety, but he's going to have some competition now. They drafted Jaquan Johnson. They have Saran Neal, Dean Marlowe in the mix, so I think it'll be very interesting to see how that cornerback battle plays out during training camp, and I think Cam Lewis is a guy to keep your eye on.
Yeah, Lewis makes a lot of sense for the Bills for all the reasons that you mentioned. You throw in Kevin Johnson to another player that they signed that has those that history of injuries. So the Bills want to have guys that are healthy that can be on the field at all times. And if you still have those injury concerns about Taron Johnson and about Kevin Johnson, a guy like Cam Lewis can really prove his worth this summer and show that he belongs, first of all, on that 53-man roster as a depth role because of what he brings to the table, but also because he can be there. Availability is key in the NFL, and if he can prove that this summer that he doesn't that he stands out for all the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, and can stay healthy, he has a chance to make an impact on this team this summer.
The Bills signed 8 undrafted free agents. They also offered a bunch of invites to guys that didn't get drafted to participate in minicamp. And one guy I also want to throw out there, a little bonus here, is Derek Key from Alabama, wide receiver / tight end. He played receiver in college, but he's projecting more as a tight end at the next level. The Brian Dable connection, it reminds you of Robert Foster, who kind of flew under the radar there because of the talent that they had, never really was able to get on the field. Keith is he's got the size, he's got the physicality, and he's a guy that, if he makes some plays and sticks around for a while, a guy that can find himself on the practice squad if he really shows out.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing with this rookie minicamp because they are bringing a lot of bodies in, and there's not a lot of roster spots, so if more than one or two players really stand out and show themselves, the Bills are going to have to make a decision in terms of maybe getting rid of a veteran already on their roster to make room for one of these players. It's going to be an exciting weekend, Friday through Sunday, hearing what these guys can do and seeing if any of these undrafted free agent rookie minicamp tryout players get extended a contract offer by the Bills.
Guys, we'll have you covered throughout minicamp. We'll have some pre-minicamp coverage, some post-minicamp coverage. Keep it locked on NYUp, Syracuse.com for all your Bills content.